in the great state of Wisconsin, in the United States of America. This April 28th, 2021 is now in session. Roll call is Alder Gerlach here.
I am.
Alder Burnett.
Here.
Vice Chair Alder Weary.
Yes.
And the Chair, Alder Scannell, is present. We're all here and accounted for. I'll take a motion to approve our agenda.
Motion to approve.
Oh, I'll second it.
Motion by Alder Weary, seconded by all in favor.
Aye.
Opposed? We got an agenda. I don't want to go too fast.
Can you just hold on a minute, please?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. Just hold on a second, because we also have a learning curve here on using the new Civic Clerk. So
Yeah, no problem.
It's going to take us a minute to figure out the right steps here. So I'll let you know when we're ready to proceed.
I'll take a motion to approve our minutes from our last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Brunette. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. Shoot.
Just give me 1 second here.
Yep.
Proceed, James. Okay, not quite there. Just have one more thing to work out in Civic Clerk.
It's all right. Whatever it takes. New technology is fun.
I'm going to go in the basement.
On item one.
All right.
We are ready for item 1 now.
Kind of work.
On to regular business. Consideration with possible action on the request by Alder Galvin for the city to study the feasibility of installing dog parks on the sites of old landfills located within the city. Many communities in Wisconsin have dog parks located on the sites of former landfills, and they are a very positive asset to those communities. Staff?
Yeah, at this point, I would just recommend opening it up to Alder Galvin to give a brief
Is he
summary.
here? I didn't see his.
Yes, he is in the meeting.
Looking right at you, Randy.
Sorry. Oh, there you are. Okay, I'm sorry, Alder Galvin. I missed you there. By
Same
Bowman?
kind of hairstyle.
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I've been to a few communities throughout Wisconsin. Madison is one area, and then some other communities in and around that area where they've had dog parks built on the top of old landfills. They're not allowed to plant trees or anything else like that, but they merely put a fence around. They get some chipped wood in there, make some paths. They put some picnic tables in, some garbage cans, and you got yourself a pretty decent sized area for people to exercise their dog. We've got one dog park in the entire city of Green Bay. And for the amount of dogs that are in this community and the amount of complaints the PD gets about dogs running loose in the parks because the people have nowhere else to take their dogs unless they want to leave the city and go out to Brown County, which has about a 5-acre enclosed dog park. De Pere has one. Howard has a small one. And Bellevue has one where you have to pay a yearly fee to use it. Well, Brown County, same thing. You have to pay a yearly fee to use it. But I just think that we've got out at Kenyers, we've got a large landfill. I know the city's been doing a lot of work on that, rehabbing it. There's a landfill across the street from Edison Middle School. Out by the woods, there's another landfill. You know, I understand there's stuff with gas and all this other stuff settling and everything. But it just, if these other communities can do it, I'm just hoping that we can find some way of making it happen in our community.
And then
Sounds like a good idea. Staff, what do you think?
Yeah, to add to that, I guess I've spoken to Director Grenier about this from a landfill perspective, but there's two issues to kind of contend with. One is what are the needs for a dog park in the community, and can park staff sustain adding dog parks to our list of amenities. And the second issue is, if we do proceed with dog parks, is our landfills the correct location? So let me talk to the one issue first as far as maintenance goes, to give you a little bit more background. So we do get regular requests to install dog parks in the city. And to date, there are 2 other dog parks currently shown on master plans for other parks. So we have one at the shipyard, that's on the shipyard master plan. And then there's also one shown on the Dan's Park master plan that was just developed last year. In addition, we get regular requests from residents to put one in their local or their neighborhood park. So there definitely is a demand for dog parks. As far as whether or not we can sustain them, I guess we do have to start being a little strategic as far as how many dog parks we're installing and where they're going in relation to the community as a whole. So that's kind of a bigger issue of where these should go and whether or not we can maintain them. But I'd like to open this up to Director Grenier to speak about the topic at hand, which is, should they be placed on landfills?
Sure, thanks. One of the little secrets in my past is the first 14 years of my career when I was in private practice, landfills are one of the things that I specialized in. So I can speak with a great deal of certainty and with a great deal of authority regarding landfills, their intents, their uses, and what's a good and not so good use for that property. The function of landfills, especially the older closed landfills that we're talking about, these were not necessarily engineered landfills like we have now. They were more of the old dig a hole, dump some garbage into it, and then close it up. So the biggest enemy of that landfill is water infiltration. There is an engineered cap. Most of these landfills were closed by order in the late 80s. And the state put together some prescriptive requirements on putting together what we would now consider to be a rudimentary cap, but it's essentially a 2-foot thick clay layer with some topsoil or seeding layer on top of it, generally in the 6 to 12 inch range. And the landfills were shaped to have slope sides so that they would shed water. They're also planted with deeper rooted vegetative types to promote evapotranspiration, to again limit the amount of water that can get through the cap. What you don't want is that water entering into the waste mass. That generates what's called leachate. And one of the things that I found was probably the best explanation of leachate is to think of your coffee maker. So when you get ready to make coffee, you take the basket out, you put a filter in, you dump the coffee grounds in, you slide it back in, and you close the cover, add the water, and you close the cover. As that water leaks into the coffee grounds, it sucks out or leaches certain properties out of the coffee grounds that goes down into the coffee pot, and the water that's in the pot is completely different than the water that you added. In a very similar manner, rainwater or infiltration getting into a landfill will leak through the garbage, and it performs the exact same physical and chemical action. It will leach out material that was in that garbage, and it comes out in the bottom, and that has to go off to a wastewater treatment plant. Again, the landfills have been designed to limit or prohibit that water infiltration. The last thing in the world you want is anything to breach that cover. So then we get to a dog park. Putting a fence post up is a problem because now you're driving that fence post through the cap materials and you provided a conduit pathway for that water to leak down into it or to have landfill gases seep back up. In order for the property to be properly utilized as a dog park, not many dog owners that I know of want their animals running around and exercising in knee-deep prairie grasses. So then you're required to cut and maintain and hold that vegetation at a lower level so that the dogs can properly utilize it. that is contrary to what those vegetative species thrive on. So you wind up with issues having to perform additional maintenance on the vegetation, not only to keep it mown, but also to overseed and replant as it's not regenerating the way that it properly should. One of the last things that we always look at is the nature of a dog. Okay, dogs dig. That's just one of the things they do, especially if the owners aren't always keeping an eye on them. And what you don't want is dogs digging holes, chasing after varmints or ground squirrels or voles or mice or whatever they're chasing that live out there when the dogs aren't utilizing the park. So, there are things that we definitely need to worry about or be ready to address. Now, Alder Galvin referenced the Ken Ewers facility. That's our Military Avenue landfill. And if you've attended some of the meetings where we've been talking about potentially putting recreational facilities, trails, paths, benches, that kind of stuff up there, there are multiple jurisdictions within DNR, multiple programs that have different staffing. And the folks who are in the waterways and, who've been involved with some of the shoreland restoration and things like that, those folks have been big supporters of it. And in the exact same meeting, staff from DNR, from the Bureau of Remediation and Redevelopment and the Bureau of Waste Management have been shaking their heads no. They're really not big fans of doing things on closed landfills because of the problems that come up with them. That's not to say it can't be done, as Alder Galvin has stated. There are other communities who have done that. When it comes to the landfill, the only landfill right now that has dual function is the H&R landfill, and that's where the ball diamonds are out on Finger Road. Department of Public Works oversees the landfill function, so the environmental monitoring and the maintenance of the final cap. And then the recreational aspect is maintained through the Parks Department. Director Ditchite indicated concerns that he had relative to staffing, and I would add staffing and budget. We currently do not have funding available in our budget to do the additional maintenance. I currently don't have staffing available to do the additional maintenance that would be inherent in adding dog parks to the landfills. Alder Galvin referenced the landfill over by Edison Middle School. That's a private landfill. That's owned by Procter & Gamble. It's not one of ours. So the ones that we own, we've got a small facility up on Humboldt Road, not too far away from Arnie Wolf. We've got the Dans Avenue landfill, which is out by the East Side Yard Waste Collection Center. If you look far in the back, especially if you're coming in, if you're out on I-43, you can see the large hill there. That's the actual landfill at Dan's. And then the Military Avenue landfill, which is up by the Ken Ewers nature area. I don't think a dog park would be appropriate at H&R because I think it would be incompatible with softball and baseball fields there. So we could definitely look into it, but it is going to require a lot of extra maintenance. There's going to be additional staffing requirements that go along with it, and a significant amount of additional funding.
Okay, anybody have any questions, comments?
Sure. One, we don't know how much funding, we don't know how much staff. We could certainly ask some of these other communities and see how much staff time they actually spend on it. The ones I've been at down south, they don't cut the grass. They let the grass grow. They've got their trails. Grass usually gets trampled down by people with their dogs and people out walking. As to punching holes into the ground, if I remember correctly, every landfill I've seen in Green Bay so far has a fence around it. And I don't know why that fence wouldn't suffice to just leave it there and use that as the fence. The fence is in the property. I don't know if we'd have to add much more fencing other than maybe a gate system that you see in most of the dog parks. Funding, like I said, Brown County charges a daily fee, or Bellevue charges a daily or a yearly fee. If he pays for someone to come in once a day, empty out the garbage, and do a spot check, make sure people are paying their fees. And, the dog owners want to use these parks, they should certainly pick up part of the tab for it. Shouldn't be people like cat lovers or chicken lovers or things like that. It should be the people that are using it. But I think we can work our way around these issues and find some solutions without having to tap all the taxpayers necessarily or have anyone go deep into their budget. And I think some of these other issues that Director Grenier I've never seen a dog really dig much of a hole. And if he's going after a varmint in the ground, that means there's already a hole there that we should probably be doing something about. Out at the Brown County Park is where I go the most. It seems like everything is pretty much right on top of the ground. Benches, garbage cans, that kind of stuff. I think it's doable if we're willing to put the effort into it. And I think if we have the dog owners pick up some of that tab, I think that really eases a lot of the strain on the budget. Oh, another question. Could we reach out to some of these entities that own these landfills and see if maybe they'd like a tax write-off by donating the use of that landfill to the citizens of Green Bay, or get like a 1 year, $1 a year lease or something like that? The one in Edison has got pine trees growing all over it. So I'm not sure about this whole cap thing you're talking about, but it's got a large fencing system around it already. And it's got a large row of pine trees that border all around the edge of it. I'm not sure why, but, and I'm not sure if they've got the same capping system that Director Grenier was referring to or not. But I mean, maybe some of these entities would be willing to lease these sites to us.
Anyone else? Director Dishite, with the planned parks for dog parks for the shipyard and was it Dan's?
Yes.
Yep. How far away are we from those? Are we planning on charging for those? We don't charge for the one at Whitney, I believe. What can you tell us about the state of those?
Yeah, we haven't had any discussions as far as whether or not we would charge for those dog parks. Right now, they're just in the master plan. So if funding becomes available to implement them and build them, that's when we'll have the discussions to do that. But right now, we don't have the money for either project to build the dog park. It's just shown in the master plan. But you're correct, at Whitney, we don't charge a fee to do that. And, it does, there is some maintenance involved with it because, although the dog owners are supposed to pick up the waste, they don't always do so.
Right.
And so our crews do oftentimes pick up the waste after the dogs. And I'm not saying it's insurmountable from a staffing perspective, because I definitely do think that there is a need in the community to install dog parks. It's just a matter of whether or not they go within our park system somewhere with land we already have, or whether or not they go on a landfill. And then once you make a determination of where the correct location is, then it comes down to where you're going to get the money to build it, which is a whole nother discussion.
If I could interject, the city collects a fee every year from dog owners for a dog tag or license or whatever it is. Not everyone does it, but it is required. It's a city ordinance. I don't know what happens to the money they collect. I think I pay $5 a year or something like that. I don't really handles that, but and I don't know if it's legal for us to add on to that licensing of the dog and use that money to fund these dog parks. It's just, if you ask the police the amount of complaints they get, and you see the amount of dogs that do run loose in the parks, because that's where people walk them, and you see them running loose, I mean, there's definitely a need. And if you've ever been campaigning, it's got to be 3 or 4 houses at least out of every 10 have got some four-legged little friends in there, some wanting to chew on you, some just want to lick you. But I mean, there's a lot of dogs in our community, and I think we should do more. I know when I've been out of town with my dog, it's neat when you can look up on on your phone and find local dog parks close to where you're staying in hotels and things like that. You know, it's an amenity. I mean, certainly for our citizens, but also for people visiting this area. And I just think if we have something available, I think it's just another draw for our community.
Alder Galvin, with 2 more dog parks planned, well, maybe Alder District first. Dog parks, do you think the city our size, how many cities our size, how many dog parks can they sustain? Do they have any idea?
I don't have an idea on that number. I'd have to research that.
Okay, well,
But
and then
it's
Alder Galvin,
It's definitely
got
more
2
than we currently have,
planned,
which is 1.
would you prefer that we use the landfills and not the 2 in the works, or in addition to, or what is your thinking on that?
Well, it's, you know, I understand costs and I understand, you know, the need for maintenance, because certainly I will tell you, not every dog owner picks up after their pet. I mean, you can walk through any city park and see that's a fact. And those aren't dog parks. So, but to me, if you have, I mean, the pocket parks are nice. I mean, I've got Astor Park right by me. I've got the East River down right by me. I got Meyer Park, which on the other side of Mason, I could easily walk to any of those. And if they had a fenced in area, I would certainly take my dog there, throw the ball for them, let her run around, that kind of stuff, interact with other dogs. A pocket dog park, like anything, there's a lot of energy with dogs. You get too many dogs in an area, just like you get too many kids in a playground, and you're going to have a problem after a while. So pocket dog parks are certainly nice if you've got the room, the time, and the money. But I think if we had some bigger parks, and that would be, to me, the area is there on the landfill, that would be the area you'd see a lot of people using it. I mean, if you go to the Brown County Dog Park, the Bellevue Dog Park, they get a lot of use. And you can certainly check with Bellevue, see how many people are buying passes there. You check with Brown County, see how many people are buying passes there. Because people do want to have their dogs get out, interact, and have some area to move around in where they can take a run. And for a lot of people, that's the way they get their exercise, is they get out there with their kids or just their significant others, and they go for these walks. And in a large, like a landfill, like a Ken Years, that's a good hike around there. A couple of good laps like that, be good for anybody and anybody's dog. So I would prefer, I think the park department would prefer larger dog parks be on landfill. That's land that can't be used for anything else anyway. And, you know, the parks, that's nice to have a couple in the inner city for people that can't get out, you know, don't have transportation. I don't know if you could take dogs, but having dog parks in the inner city, I think, would be another asset. But those would have to be based on the size of our parks, probably something on the scale of the Whitney Dog Park.
Okay. Alder Stevens.
So regarding Dan's Park, I know it's in the master plan to have a dog park there, but I just want to bring it forward now. That has been put on the back burner because of the Baird Creek preservation and also the neighborhood that's over there. I don't know if the director is aware of that or not.
I'm
Right.
aware.
And
I'm
actually,
aware
just so
that-
everyone knows, tonight there was supposed to be a second item, and that was me requesting staff to study putting pocket dog parks in a couple of my parks in my district. But there was a glitch with the computer, and that communication never got forwarded in time for this meeting. So that'll be at the next meeting. Just heads up.
Well, I guess what I would recommend doing at this point is, you know, I do think that there is a need to install dog parks in the city more so than what we have. And I think that we need to take a more comprehensive look at where those dog parks should go to serve the community as a whole instead of a particular neighborhood. So what I would recommend, if you're looking for a recommendation, would be for park staff to create a committee of some type. And that committee could kind of set 3 objectives moving forward. So one would be to develop criteria for a site location for these dog parks. develop criteria for the site design, and then to establish a process for the public to get involved for decision-making regarding the siting of new dog parks. So I know like in Alder Stevens district with Dan's Park, that request came forward because at the master planning sessions for that particular park, there was some desire to include that in the master plan. So that's how it made it in the master plan. And then after the master plan was approved, there was some objections to it. So I think we need to kind of step back a little bit and take a more comprehensive look at the city as a whole as it relates to dog parks, and then come back with a recommendation based on criteria and public input citywide of where the best location dog parks should be placed. To me, that seems like a very good option moving forward to look at the community as a whole.
Absolutely. If you're going to have a dog park of any size, it's better to have it located so everyone can take advantage of it. And you've got to think about parking, because again, if it's not in a walkable neighborhood area, how else are you going to get there? But you're going to drive and you're going to have to park. And so those are things that you have to think about. If, say, Astor Park was a dog park area, there's restricted parking on 2 sides of that block. So people would have to be blocking up parking in all the other neighborhood streets, take their dogs there. So, a large dog park in the inner city makes any park is a perfect spot. You have people in apartments and things like that, and they can walk their dogs there and exercise them. But that serves only a limited area. And that's why I agree with Dan, doing a comprehensive study. How many dogs do we have, in the city that at least we know of? And so how many can we serve? That kind of stuff.
I was kind of thinking along the same lines as the director, to put this in a big dog kennel, so to speak, park kennel, and study the whole situation. It makes, I think this is something that should be part of that conversation. And any idea roughly how long we'd have to wait for something to get some feedback on this, Director Deshain?
At this point, I don't have an answer for you. I haven't really talked through this with staff. It's something that I, have been considering for a bit of time here, but we really haven't talked through the details of how this process would go and how long it would take, and more importantly, what would the public process entail and how would we get them involved in the decision making. So, if that's the direction you'd like us to go, I can definitely look into it and get back to you at a future park committee with a response.
That sounds good. Or even just including, if, unless there's something we need to really start discussing, just to give us keep us advised of how things are progressing. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll make the motion as Dan had stated, to refer to staff to form that citizen committee and bring back the suggestions. And
Yeah, a second.
I think that's a good first step, because I agree. I've heard comments from others. They would like to see, expansion of this. So let's take a look at it.
Okay, we have a motion by Alder Weary, seconded by Alder Brunette. Any further discussion? There is something Alder Galvin brought up that got me thinking, how about a chicken park? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that goes back to you, Dan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Good idea, Alder Galvin.
Let me know when you're ready, James. Okay, we're ready for item 2.
Okay, item number 2, consideration with possible action on the request by Downtown Green Bay, Inc. to install temporary seating on city deck through the fall of 2021. I see there's someone from Downtown Inc. Do you want to hear from them first, Dan, or did you want to jump in quick?
Yeah, why don't I give a brief summary, and then if you have questions, we can open the floor. So Downtown Green Bay Inc. Contacted the city a few weeks ago and requested approval to install temporary seating on the Cherry Street landing at City Deck. So last year, they worked with the Public Works Department to install temporary dining on a portion of the Washington Street surface parking lot to help adjacent restaurants with social distancing requirements due to the pandemic. So that was pretty successful last year. So this year, they decided to pursue the same idea but take a different approach. And instead of installing the seating in that surface parking lot, to instead install additional seating on City Deck. So they're proposing to purchase several tables, chairs, planters, and a drink railing, along with potentially a stage, and put it on the Cherry Street landing. So I've reviewed this request with Downtown Green Bay Inc., and together we've selected appropriate furniture that we both feel would be acceptable in that location. If this is approved and the planters are installed, those planters would be planted and maintained by Downtown Green Bay Inc. So there'd be no cost or maintenance involved with these tables and chairs and seating. So if we do approve it, though, the park crews would probably find a way to secure the tables and chairs down to the decking so that they don't disappear at night or end up in the river. So for now, Downtown Green Bay Inc. is proposing to install the furniture from June to October. And then at the end of the season, they'll reevaluate it to determine whether or not it was successful. And then from there, they'll make a decision of whether or not they'll propose to continue this on for next year, or maybe they might even decide to donate that furniture to the city as a permanent installation on City Deck. We'll decide that at a later date at the end of the season. Those options are just open right now. And we have reviewed this with the law department, and there really is no concern from a legal standpoint. So Downtown Green Bay Inc. would have to sign the typical hold harmless agreement that they would have to sign for any other similar type activity, and anybody else would also have to sign a similar hold harmless agreement. So that being said, as a staff, I'm supportive of it, and I would recommend approval. I'll leave it up to you if you have questions for Downtown Green Bay Inc. to open the floor.
Just one question for I'd like to ask real quick. Do you see any problem with securing that furniture to the decking?
We would initially first look at seeing if there's a way that we could strap it down to the decking so that we don't have to put holes in the decks. But we're not sure if that's going to be successful until the furniture is on site. So as a worst case scenario, we would have to screw it down to the decking. But we would do it with kind of wood screws instead of bolts so that the holes would be somewhat discreet. So if they're removed, they wouldn't be very large holes.
Okay. Well, then, any questions or comments from any committee? Or would you like to feel any need to open the floor, or what are your wishes here? I'll take a motion as well.
Looks like a reasonable request, Mr. Chairman. I'd move to approve.
Yeah. I got a quick question, Alder Scannell. Yeah, I'm in support. I noticed on the deck, there's the railings. That's part of this project as well, like tables that could be connected to the railing. Is that correct?
They're like kind of like a shelf that's connected to the railings.
Sure. How many total? I mean, I think it's a great idea. I'm just curious, how many total do you anticipate?
Give me a second. I'll pull up that plan. I know they're shown on the map.
Yeah, it's
so
on the map,
it shows two of those shelving units.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Alder Gerlach?
Is there any downside to this at all? Is there any reason why we wouldn't approve it?
No, I mean, the only downside could potentially be potentially more litter in that area that our crews would have to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the only downside, but in my opinion, the benefits outweigh the downside.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion by Alder Weary, and was that seconded by Alder Net?
Gerlach, I think.
Oh, Gerlach. Okay, Alder Gerlach. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you're all set, Sally. uh, or on Jen. I see Jen there too now. Okay. I'll wait for number 3.
Let me know when you're ready, James. Okay, we're set for item 3. Thank you.
Okay, item 3, consideration with possible action on modifying the rules at Joanny's skate park to allow bikers and scooters. Staff?
So the skate park was open to the public in 2002, and on August 27th of 2002, the Parks Committee reviewed and approved the rules as it relates to the skate park. So at the time, the recommendation was to only allow skateboards and inline skaters to use the facility. This was a fairly common practice at the time because concrete skate parks were fairly new to the region, and so there wasn't a lot of background data as far as whether or not the bikes and scooters would damage new concrete skate parks after they were installed. So at the time, a lot of municipalities went that route and banned bikes and scooters from using the skate parks. There was a lot of discussion at that time on this issue, and then in fact the biking group later on that fall in October, they requested that the Parks Committee reconsider the no bike rule. And that decision at that meeting was to continue to ban bikes from the facility. So this has been an ongoing discussion ever since the day we opened. And what we found since we've opened is that the rule is pretty much impossible to enforce unless we staff and monitor the site 100% of the time. On any given day, you'll go out there and you'll see people on bikes and scooters and they're using the facility, even though the signs that are on site clearly say no bikes and scooters are allowed. And this has been happening from day one since we opened. And so this has been a difficulty on the police end of things trying to enforce that rule when it really is nearly impossible to enforce. That being said, the request came forward from the police department to actually amend the rules to allow them, because it's very difficult to say that some rules are enforced but other ones are not when clearly they're on site using it. So I did a little bit of research on this recently to see where we sit with things. So I've talked to our maintenance staff, and really they have not seen any substantial concrete damage beyond what you'd expect of a concrete facility nearly 20 years old. So although the bikers and scooters have been using it, we haven't been seeing the damage that we thought was going to occur when the bikes were banned from the facility eventually, or from day one. And then I did reach out to other communities to see what's typical with concrete skate parks. So I randomly selected New York, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Appleton, because I know that all of them have concrete skate parks, and some of the parks are fairly new. All communities that I researched do allow bikes and scooters in their concrete skate parks. And I then contacted Appleton to get more information from them. I believe their facility opened around 2015, but I'm not sure exactly the date. They haven't had any concerns with bikers and scooters sharing the facility with the skaters and the skateboarders. And also, since then, they haven't seen any substantial damage that could be attributed to the bikers. And they also agreed that it would be very difficult to enforce the ban of bikes in any concrete skate park. So I did reach out to the law department on this issue and verified with them that there have not been any lawsuits that we're aware of with conflicts between bikers and other users in the facility. So that was confirmed by the law department. And then they did tell me that there was no additional liability to the city if we do make this change. The same recreational immunity laws would still apply. So I know Commander Warch is here to answer any questions you might have from a policing standpoint. But from a staff standpoint, from a park staff standpoint, we're definitely in favor of this request.
I think it's a great idea myself. I'm hoping that we can scoot bikers and scooters from the city deck over that way. I know that's a problem that's ongoing too. So hopefully, maybe this will, if we make it official that that's a place to go, that's where they'll start going. So I'm in favor of this. Is there any comments or questions from anyone else? Alder
I
Gerlach?
want you to know we have finally found a topic on which I have deep expertise. I go to Joanny's skate park several times a week. You probably didn't know I'm an avid skateboarder. Can't you just picture it?
Yes.
I just am fascinated by watching those kids in the skate park. And I will tell you that the bikes and the scooters, and really I go to that skate park several times a week. Zena thinks it's boring, but I love it. And the bikes and the scooters far outnumber the skateboards. And I have watched in amazement. I've never seen a close call. I have never seen any bad behavior. I've never heard a bad word. They're just going like crazy. They're getting exercise in the fresh air and, being good to each other. Don't send any more there. It's pretty busy. But I think it's wonderful. I noticed that the rules say you can't be in there with bikes and scooters, but that's what's mostly there. And it seems to be working beautifully.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, if Captain's fine with it, I mean, Commander's fine with it.
Yeah, the police department's in full support of this. We've actually having a lot of problems at Joanny's Park as of late, especially here with the warm weather upon us. But this is a good change, or a good proposed change, because making police officers the bike police is not a good idea, and it's something that we just don't have the ability to enforce if that was the decision.
Cool.
Anyone else? I'll take a motion otherwise.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Brunette. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Let's make that change. Let's make it happen.
You know when you're ready, James. We are set for item 4.
Okay, item 4, consideration with possible action on the request by Alder Weary to review the Park Department facility use policy as it relates to user groups advertising in the parks. Alder Weary, I don't quite understand what this is. Enlighten me.
You bet. I brought this forward, I don't know, Dan, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. I think it was Joanny was the director. If you look at, and I had pictures of that time of, Little League field. If you look at the outfield fence, there's usually signs from a sub place or a muffler place or a restaurant, people who pay to have their sign there, and it all goes towards that Little League. And then they put that money back into the field or reducing costs for the kids. Alloway's very good at it, Deep Pier. And if you look at a lot of the surrounding areas, they are. And then we had kind of had an older policy. We've kind of shifted halfway, but I've been requested again from both leagues on both of the city to allow these banners up more than what we would just like on a weekend, let it up for the season. So just curious to see what Dan thinks and see if we can help out these youth groups, because the more money they get, then they help build dugouts and build snack huts, and they help put up the big light fixtures. And so it just seems to be a win-win.
Sure.
What's the concern with what's the concern of over advertising, I guess it would be?
I think at one point, and maybe Dan could speak to it, but there was a concern that didn't like to see the banners, up all summer. But I think when people know, the reason behind it is generating money for the kids in the ball fields, I think it offsets. But I'll let Dan talk on it.
Director Dishai?
Sure, I can speak to that. So the policy that's included in the agenda packet is the current policy that's been approved by the Parks Committee and City Council. So I've highlighted a few pages, I think it's pages 13 through 15 of that document in red. So that's the particular pages that refer to this issue. So you can kind of disregard looking at the rest of the policy if you don't have time to review that. But in regards to this policy, so prior to the changes that Alderman Weary discussed, there was no advertising allowed in the parks. And the reason for that is because the parks were viewed by staff as, this is an area of peacefulness, more or less, and advertising to some people causes clutter, and they go to the parks to get away from all of that advertising because they're kind of inundated with that from day-to-day life through a lot of other channels. So that was the policy initially. When this policy was revised a few years ago, and I don't remember the exact date it was revised, we understood that there was a concern by the user groups to allow advertising in the parks in some way, shape, or form. So what you see in front of you is a compromise between what staff recommended and really what the user groups wanted to see. As Alderman Weary mentioned, ideally what they would like to do is sell advertising rights, or I wouldn't say all of them, but a few user groups have brought this forward and requested to sell advertising rights for the whole season and install banners on the fencing, maybe put them up on the outfield fence for an entire baseball season, let's say. And that was their original request. That's what's kind of being discussed tonight. What this policy put into place was a compromise, which was to allow them to do the advertising and sell that advertising rights, but it would be up to the user groups to only display it when they're using the field, whether it's practices, games, tournaments. It would be up to them when they want to display those, and they're in essence responsible to put up the signs beforehand and then take them down when their activity is done. So this policy was put in place as kind of a compromise between everybody. And in my opinion, as a parks director and what I've seen throughout the years, is that this policy is an adequate compromise, but it does provide or it does create somewhat of a problem for the user groups in the fact that somebody has to commit to doing that. It's an extra step in the process that they have to do. Somebody has to volunteer to bring the signs that day, put them up, and then take them down. And it's an extra step that, is challenging for them. But in my opinion, there are a lot of other user groups in the parks, and I guess thing that we have to keep in mind as we're reviewing this policy is fair equity between all of the user groups and everybody else in the parks who are just using it for their enjoyment. So for example, in a baseball field, there's oftentimes multiple groups using that baseball field. And if one group is seeing the benefit of those advertising rights, but another group is not, well, then they have to be viewing those signs for all of their games and practices also. Whether or not that's a problem or not, there's a potential problem with that, but I wouldn't know if that's an issue or not until we implement it. The other thing is there's a lot of other user groups out there, such as pickleball groups, there's football groups, there's soccer leagues. They don't necessarily have fencing to put signs up on. And so is it fair and equitable to a Little League group who is able to make a considerable amount of profit because there's fencing available, whereas a soccer group, there really isn't? Other than if you want to put up a sign on a net or a soccer goal. So, you have to think about the equity between all of the different user groups also as part of this discussion. So if you're looking for my opinion as to whether or not the policy needs to be amended, I guess my personal opinion is that the policy is fine the way it is. But I do understand that it is challenging for the user groups having to put these signs up and down on a daily basis. Now, that being said, I did have James, Assistant Director Anderson, reach out to other surrounding communities in the area to see what they do. And what he found is that it's across the board different. Every community handles it differently. Some communities ban it outright. Other ones allow it, allow people to hang banners on the signs. Other ones require more permanent signs be installed, so it's not a temporary banner. So there really isn't a consistency from community to community. And, so I can't really tell you what the norm is. But I do know that some communities allow more than what we do, and some allow less.
Okay, any questions or comments from staff? Do you know, is there anybody here to speak? Doesn't look like it.
I don't think anybody is here to speak on this issue.
Yeah,
Other than that,
so, anything from anyone else?
point out, I think right now it's just 2 banners are allowed, which, really isn't very many. If anything, that could be used, looking to do anything to help generate that revenue, because they do help obviously build the dugouts and put up the new lights and help pay for those things. So everybody, all the user groups do enjoy some of that money. And like Dan said, yeah, you can go anywhere. You can go to Deep Pier, Alloway, Schwabenon, and everybody's a little bit different. And having been in Little League for the past 6-7 years, I can tell you they're pretty pinched for getting anybody to help with anything. Not in the concession stand or even coach or referee, things like that. So that is a problem, trying to get these put up before and after every single game or practice. That is an issue. I'd be curious what everybody else thinks. I don't know.
Would you want to amend this then to more than 2? How would you amend it? Would not put a limit on the number of banners, or increase it to 3, 4, or how would you like to see that?
Well, if you're asking me, I would say to allow the banners to be up all summer. I mean, that's just me, but
I'm sorry, you broke up a little. I couldn't quite catch it.
Oh, okay. If you were asking me, I'd be fine with having these banners up all summer. That's all with me. You put them up there till, set a date. I don't know, Labor Day or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious to see what everybody else thinks.
Anyone else got anything to think on this? Alder Burnett?
Yeah, Alder Ware's point, in order to do that, we could generate more revenue if, instead of the billboards and signs being up for games, to be up an entire season. That's more revenue. So that's something to consider. Really on the fence, seems to have done the legwork and affirms that the policy works for now, but that doesn't mean we don't have to change it, or that we should change it. So I'm really conflicted, because when you go to the park, it's right. Director Ditchite's correct. Solitude, the beauty of nature in a lot of these parks, and to be overrun by signs and advertising, that's a consideration. So I don't really have a strong opinion either way, quite frankly.
Alder Gerlach?
I have a strong opinion one way. Of course, I'm very much in favor of Little League and all of these sports and being financially supported. But I have several concerns about changing this to leave banners and signs up all summer or all season. One is the likelihood that they won't be maintained properly, and that it'll start to look kind of like a rummage sale or something. Another one is, if it does start to look like that, are we going to expect our park staff to monitor this and see how it's looking? And then who's going to enforce it if it's starting to fall down or whatever? And I will tell you that it has been my job for like 7 or 8 years as a volunteer and as a paid professional to raise money for nonprofits. And I'm telling you, there are other ways to acknowledge your donors and your sponsors than putting up a sign. And some of them are very creative. And sometimes the person raising the money has to ask the donor how they might like to be recognized. And you know, we might find all different ways of recognizing people and making money for these nonprofits without hanging signs. I've got no problem with signs up during games, and I don't care how many there are. Put them up at the beginning of the game and they take it down after the game. But to have, as Alder Brunette said, to have all of these signs, you know, starting to grow in our parks, I just think that would be a very bad idea. I would not. I would oppose the whatever you call this. What do you call this? The policy. Yeah, I'd keep it the way it is.
I would ask the committee, what about as kind of a halfway point instead of 2 signs, if they do something like 8? It's just going to be during the games or a tournament. I mean, an outfield's a pretty big area, just to have 2 signs. You put 8 signs up and they're up for the weekend and then they take them down, or up for a game, take them down. That might be a reasonable, because 2 seems a pretty minimal.
May I ask this number 2, does that mean total number of signs that can be up on the field, or does it mean that one team or one organization can put up 2?
How
Dan?
how the policy is currently written is that each team is allowed 2 banners. So if, you know, they could do 4 banners per game if they so choose.
Well. So if you have 4 teams and a lot of them have 6 or 8 teams in their league, so should it be by league maybe instead of by team? Because the teams fluctuate every year.
Correct. Well, they do it, I'm saying, by playing. So if there's one game being played, they could install 4 signs. If it's a tournament, what the policy states is that they're allowed 2 signs or banners times the number of teams that are in the league playing for that tournament. So if there's several games with several teams, they could potentially install easily 8 signs or more if it's a tournament.
Would you have any problem, Dan, if there were just 8 signs? You know, it's a Tuesday night and you got 2 games, you know.
Well, right now, how it's written is if there's 2 games with 4 different teams, they can put up 8 signs.
All right. And then maybe they're misreading how that's read too. That could be.
I mean, I am open to considering writing it differently or wording it differently to clarify things, but that's how the policy is currently written. Because I don't think it's quite as restrictive as what you thought.
Or they thought, for that matter.
Okay. And we can clarify that with all of the user groups too. Our recreation staff can reach out to them, review the policy with them on a yearly basis, so that they know going into the season what's acceptable and what isn't.
Okay, because I know, you know, obviously Troy asks me all the time about this, and then Mr. Madigan and a few other people from the east side have been asking recently about it. So would it be all right, committee, if we refer this to staff and then we can reach out to these user groups and clarify some of these things? And if everything's fine, it'll just come back and we can receive and place it on file? Or maybe they can come up with, you know, maybe a tweak to it that we're not seeing.
The purpose of referring to staff to do what? To make it clearer?
To reach out to the east and west side Little League teams, organizations, to see if the way it's written is being perceived correctly, understood correctly, or if there are some changes that they have in mind that we might be open to, and then just bring it back to our next committee meeting.
That a motion?
They were reluctant to come tonight because I think in the past they've been met with some.
I seconded it. Alder Brunette went downstairs. Oh, no, he didn't.
I sort of let my daughter in, but I would second it if you don't.
Well, Alder Garlock already beat you to it. So we have a motion by Alder Wery to send this back to staff to reach out to the groups to see if there's any need to change any language, make sure they understand that we're all on the same page and come back to us. And seconded by Alder Garlock. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That
You have a helper, Jesse. Future alderperson there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want that on my worst enemy. No. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Let me know when you're ready, James.
Meaning the job, not her. She can do whatever she wants. The job is what I mean.
Come on,
Use
this
that.
job is a barrel of monkeys.
It's a barrel of something, some days.
We are ready
My
for
daughter's
item
18.
5.
She could run now. Could have 3 generations.
Ooh. Okay, we're on for number 5. Consideration with possible action on the request by Ducks Unlimited to fund and install a second controlled wetland at Ken Ewers Park, west of the existing parking lot. Staff.
So as you may recall, last year, Ducks Unlimited completed the installation of a controlled wetland east of the existing parking lot at Ken Ewers. So the project consisted of the removal of all the trees along the shoreline dike, and then the inland side of the dike was then graded out to a less severe slope. A water control structure was then installed, which will allow the city to add water, or to change the water levels depending on the time of year, to encourage waterfowl nesting and habitat. And then also that water level adjustment will allow us to help control the invasive species within that wetland. So the group, Ducks Unlimited, they funded the engineering and construction costs entirely through grants. There was no cost to the city to complete this project. So the project turned out well, and the Parks Department is happy with the end result. So now Ducks Unlimited would like to begin planning on phase 2 of the project, which is to create a similar controlled wetland in the existing pond area west of the parking lot. So the same scope of work would apply to this area. So the trees would be removed, the dike would be regraded and seeded, a water control structure would be added and installed there. And then, if approved in construction, the Parks Department would then take ownership of the improvements and maintain the water levels as needed. So right now, Ducks Unlimited is only looking for approval of this project from a conceptual standpoint. So if they get the support of the Parks Committee and City Council, they'll then continue to apply for grants to complete the engineering and find funding for the construction of this project. So once the engineering funding is in place, they would then begin the engineering of the site work for our review. So right now, all that they have is the conceptual diagrams that they brought forward until they know if they have the support of the city on this. So this project would have to come back to the Parks Committee at a later date for review and approval if they are successful in securing all of the funding needed to construct it. So once the project engineering is complete, they would have to enter into a developer's agreement with the city, which would allow them to hire a contractor and manage the construction of the managed wetland. So that's the same process we went through for the last wetland. And then, so this developer's agreement would have to come back to the committee for review and approval. So at that point, you'll know whether or not they have the funding to proceed, because they're not going to proceed with the developer's agreement if they don't have the money to build it. So as a staff, I'm supportive of this request.
Sounds good to me. Alder Burnett?
Move to approve. I'd like to add some comments if I get a second.
Second.
Right, Alder Burnett?
Yeah, I mean, awesome resource out there. The work that's been done at Ken Ewers has been remarkable over the years. That's a growing, that has always been a very active place for waterfowl and ducks and geese, and to preserve and to nurture that returned to the volume that it had been. I remember back in the day, people used to duck hunt out there and get like tons and tons of ducks. I don't know if that's the end goal or the purpose long term, but Ducks Unlimited has done tremendous work throughout our community. So to partner with them, I think it's wonderful. So I'm in complete support. And I will say though, I'm not sure how possibly adding Fat Tire Biking out there would be a good fit. Although
And a dog park. And a dog park.
A dog park. I like the duck, so that's all. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything?
No, I like the pike spawning. That looks pretty cool. So yeah, I'd like a good project.
Yeah. And at this point, I'm not sure.
Expertise.
At this point, I'm not sure if the pike spawning will end up being part of the project in the end or not. That might be a phase 3.
Oh, then I'm out.
Mhm.
That's a little fishy. It's too upscale. All right. We have a motion by Alder Burnett. We have a second by Alder Weary. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Go Ducks Unlimited.
We are set for the next item.
Item number 6, consideration of possible action on approving the docking fees for Lake Memorial Park to accommodate cruise ship docking. Staff.
Yeah, so as you know, over the last few years, there have been some discussions about the possibility of cruise ships docking at Light Memorial Park. So in 2020, there was some tentative dates scheduled, but none of them came to fruition due to the pandemic. So I'm sure that these discussions will start up again soon, now that the pandemic is on the downward trend. We don't have any confirmed dates scheduled. What we're trying to do is be proactive in the process and go through some of the steps that we need to go through to get so that we can do some quick approvals when the request comes forward and if they come forward. So one step that we need to go through is to formally approve our fees for the docking of a cruise ship at Light Park. So typically we set our fees at budget time for the following year. That was not included in our fee schedule at last year's budget time. So what we'd like to do now is set the fee structure so that if we are approached by a cruise ship, we're ready to go with the approvals, at least as it relates to the fee structure. So we did reach out to other ports to research what they charge for docking. And from the research we found, the fee structure is basically the same from port to port, so that there's no advantage of selecting one port over another from a fee standpoint. So what we're proposing is to charge $1,500 per day to dock at the facility, and then $2,000 per day if they're staying overnight. So it's either paying $1,500 or $2,000 a day, depending on whether or not they're docking at night. And so this is the same fee structure that is consistent with all of the other ports that we researched. So in the future, we may have to add to the fee structure at a later date to include costs such as garbage pickup, water service, sewer service, bus service, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot of different fees that could be associated with this. But until we actually get the request from the cruise ships, we don't know what those fees would be. So for now, if a request comes forward, what we would charge for those additional services is just the cost of our expenses. So whatever we incur for costs, that's what we would put on to the cruise ship companies for those additional services beyond the docking fees. And then in the future, we can recommend modifications to our fee structure at budget time to include some of those service costs if they're a desire by the cruise ships. So right now, all that we're proposing is you approve the $2,000 docking fee for if there's night docking and $1,500 if it's just for the day.
Anybody questions, comments? Otherwise, I'll take a motion.
I move to approve those fees.
Yes.
Okay, motion by Alder Weary. Fees, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Can you say who made the motion and who seconded it, please? I didn't catch
Alder
that.
Gerlach made the motion. Alder Weary seconded.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are set for item 7.
Item 7, consideration with possible action on the approval of change order number 3 for $24,550. Incorporate stormwater management engineering into Stantec's contract for the design of the East River Trail connection from Main Street to Webster Avenue. Staff.
So a while ago, the city entered into an engineering contract with Stantec to complete the engineering for the construction of the proposed canoe kayak launch and the East River Trail connection from Main Street to Webster Avenue. So after the preliminary engineering was done, it was determined by Public Works that we are going to be required to incorporate stormwater management into the project also. That was not in the original scope of work through Stantec when we hired them. So they provided a change order cost of $24,550 to add this engineering service to their contract. So this cost includes not only the engineering of stormwater for the city property for the canoe kayak launch, the trail, but it also includes the stormwater management for the adjacent RDA-owned property to the north that will be redeveloped as residential. So when we purchased the two warehouses, or the three warehouses recently on St. George Street, the RDA acquired some of that property for residential development, and we kept a portion of the property for the parks, for the trail. So it will be more cost efficient to do all of the engineering together instead of separately for both projects. And then what we would do is split the design costs and the stormwater management construction costs with the RDA. So for the engineering, the RDA has agreed to pay half of the total cost of this change order because it is going to provide them with the stormwater management that they need to redevelop that site. So the city would be responsible for the other half, which I believe is $12,275 of that change order cost. So we do have adequate funding in that project account because we have money set aside for construction and engineering already set aside for that project. So I would recommend approval of this change order.
Committee, anything?
Looks pretty good. Move to approve.
Move to approve. Alder Weary. Seconded by Alder Burnett. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously.
Okay, we are ready for the next agenda item, and James will come to the microphone and speak on that.
Okay, the update on the fat tire biking at Highnessera Park. What do you got, James?
It's like bringing them in the relief pitcher for an inning. Highnessera Park has actually been overall, we haven't received any concerns. Received one email just asking whether or not we were going to potentially do a public input meeting at all in the next month or so. But overall, with the focus group, staff is currently discussing and also strategizing some of the short-term and long-term options that were talked about in that focus group. And so currently staff is working together to then potentially present those options at a future date. So, but overall, Fat Tire Biker, the use has, like I said before, it's kind of considerably dropped actually at that park because other parks are also open for Fat Tire biking. So the amount of groups and things like that has just dropped significantly, and we haven't really heard any, as far as I know, haven't heard any concerns or like that from the group. So that's the update right now.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Motion to receive and place on file by Alder Burnett.
Second.
Second by Alder Gerlach. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and that is received and placed on file. The director's report. The excellent director's report again. Any questions, comments? Anything you need to add, Dan?
No, I have nothing new to add other than I think I said this last time, but I'll repeat it. So Bay Beach and the Wildlife Sanctuary both open this weekend on Saturday. So Bay Beach Amusement Park opens in the morning for the weekends through May. And the sanctuary is switching to summer hours, and nearly all of the buildings and attractions will be open starting Saturday out at the sanctuary.
Now, how did the schooling go out at the sanctuary this year?
It was really successful. So the students came back to school the same time that the Green Bay Public School children went back to school in person. We did have a few individuals who still wanted to stay virtual versus in person, but in general it was really positive. And I think the parents of the students that came in person really appreciated the fact that we were back in person versus virtual. And in general, it was a successful school season out there. So,
How's our summer help recruiting been?
I unfortunately did not get an update from staff before this meeting. I know that we've gotten a few individuals who have signed up for,
A few dozen?
I don't think quite that many. I mean, we're still struggling, I know that. I know James, I don't know if Assistant Director Anderson, do you have any updates in regards to that you could share? Okay, he can answer that. He'll be right here.
So a couple things, just so you guys are aware, we did form a team in our department that would look at how we can, with public relations and marketing and how we can public outreach. Part of that was really, we've had strong support. We really appreciate the media. Essentially all the media channels in Green Bay have really been trying to help us out and push the message out that we need summer staff. We probably, I just talked to our aquatics rec supervisor today, and she said, we're definitely still in a hole, but she has seen a slow trickle of applicants coming in. So that was, I don't want to be too optimistic at this point, I guess, but it was at least we've received a few over the past few days with some of these media. The two ways that we're getting, we asked people, how have you heard about this? And essentially the media and also word of mouth. So anything people can do, honestly, to spread the word of mouth that we're in this situation and that this is probably going to be their best summer job ever in their life. That's what we're promoting. So if anything, if you guys can do anything with that or any channels you have with word of mouth, that'll really help us out. So we are working on it. It has gotten a little bit better, but I don't want to get, like I said, real optimistic at this point. But I have heard that with it sounds like colleges are going to be ending earlier from some of the staff, and hopefully within 2 weeks at the next park committee meeting, we have a hopefully, fingers crossed, a little better presentation for you on that. So
Now, retired people can be lifeguards, right? Retired, yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
You don't want me being a lifeguard. I'd be a better skateboarder.
Yeah, so right now on the call, I see at least 4 or 5 that could be.
What do you say, Alder Weary? No Speedos, though.
I'm not retired, but you mean all.
So,
but do you ever get retired people or?
Yes.
Older?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. I think Jesse had a question.
I thought Bay Beach was the best summer job you'll ever have.
Oh, just working for the Parks Department in general. Any of the.
Got it. All right.
Yes.
Got it. If you can swim, you're a lifeguard. The pools are the best job.
Yep,
If you
ride
can't
operator,
swim, got it.
Lifeguard.
No, but James, I really appreciate the work you all are doing. I know a lot of city aldermen have shared it on their Facebook pages. We are trying to get the word out too. I know it's hard after being closed much of all of last year. Almost 2 of our 3 pools, then to lose that rollover from the previous season. It's been rough, I know. So
and we appreciate
keep at
that.
it.
Thank you.
You got to swim to be a lifeguard? Dang, I don't know.
Probably. So, motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Alder Brunette to receive and place on file, seconded by Alder Gerlach. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're received and placed on file. Our next meeting is May 12th. Anything else, Dan?
Nope, that should do it.
Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Alder Weary, seconded by Alder Brunette. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Bye. What do you say, Alder Weary?
We're gonna go with a little bonus time, 6:30. That's a nice.
10 minutes. Wow, great.
Yeah, you can actually get a bite to eat, Jesse.
All right. I gotta let the dogs out.
All right.
Who let the dogs out?
Don't start. Don't start.
Use that joke.
No.
Use
Leave
that
me.
joke. You're getting stale.
All right.